Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're here live with Red Worldwide on Co-working Live, and we are excited that you are here joining us today. And today we are going to delve into a really, really good presentation that has more to do with, it's called Foxhole Leadership. And so we've been talking about legacy on Tuesdays, and we really are intentional about making sure that we are taking care of those who are in our successive downline, per se, in our businesses. But we also want to make sure that we are concentrating on feeding ourselves as leaders. And I spend a lot of time doing things to make sure that I am upping my game. I'm always in upgrade mode, taking some class, and I think some of you guys have heard me talk about the fact that I try to do a webinar a month or a certification or something to really improve me, because I think that as I'm trying to pour into the next level of leadership, I have to make sure that I have more to pour. And so, and getting more to pour, it's really an exciting thing to go into these places of study where, whether it's online or whether it's taking a class in person, to just always make sure that I'm upgrading my skills, sharpening my knife, okay, making sure that I've got the things that I need to have so that when I'm looking forward to mentoring or coaching or whatever it is that I'm doing to pour into others, I've got something in me from which I can, extend. You cannot impart what you don't possess. And so it's important for you to possess something that is valuable so that you can impart that to, again, your next level of leadership. So we're excited about that today. And we're going to jump in here. Let me grab my slides so that we can make sure that you guys can see. But we are going to jump in here today and bring you a presentation from the Value Builder System. I am a certified Value Builder business advisor, and from time to time, I present live sessions, and sometimes I present these on the internet as well, and in also the metaverse. And today we're going to be working from a set of slides and material that I believe will really be something that you all could, do something with in every area of your business. And so we want to make sure that everybody's able to see the slides. I think we are having just a little bit of tech difficulty on the side of YouTube. So give me just a second and we will pull everybody together here. Okay. I can see that we're seeing it in, okay, there we are. Let's see, where are we? And if we're able to get, no, we're just, for whatever reason, that one's not quite working. Give me just a second and we'll get you guys all back online. There we are. I believe we're all online now. Okay. All right. So with that said, we're going to hop in here because I think that it's important for us to, really bring some context when we start talking about leadership. And then more importantly, today we're talking about foxhole leadership. We want to look at the research. We just have to look at the research first. And so let's take a look and see what we're seeing. So the vast majority are motivated by independence. Okay. And so we're looking at these business owners here. 17% are more likely to sell their businesses. I mean, they just are, and which of the following best describes your long-term goal for your business? Do you plan to, this was a question that these business owners were asked that, do you plan to sell my business to a third party, transition my business to my kids, or something else? And so 48%, which is, pretty huge, said that they planned to sell their business to a third party. And this is pre-COVID, okay? That was their plan. And 2%, okay, let's see if we can look at these numbers. During COVID, 56% planned to sell their business to a third party. And then there was the transition, right? This A 17% plan to transition it to their children. And before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, or I should say during the pandemic, 12%, plan to transition the business to their kids. Okay. And I mean, if we're looking at these next set of numbers, I really want you to be able to understand, what it was that really had people, kind of stoked. I mean, they really looked at things from a different standpoint because of what was going on in the marketplace. 17% dropped in business owners sticking around, most now planning to sell within 5 years. Okay, so it was 2 to 5 years. During the pandemic, some things happened, and all of a sudden there was a jump from 33% to 39%. Okay, and people who wanted to sell within 10 years, there was 49%, before the pandemic, and 41%, afterwards. And so these numbers are, really startling, because when you look at the fact that, there are people who plan to not to build the next Google, but to be in charge of their business, right? That was the motivation, was there, to be independent. But, something happened. Business owners' definition of wealth really did change. And we have to kind of look at what happens, when we go through these times of, challenges in our society. Most people were motivated by independence. And when we're looking at it from here, okay, which of the following best describes your definition of someone who is wealthy? We had 20% saying an individual who had at least 10 million in investable assets, and then we ended up with about, 38%, okay, who had a different viewpoint, right? And 42% having enough money to do whatever you want, whenever you want. Before the pandemic, went to 47% of this, having enough money to do whatever you want, whenever you want. And that's kind of an interesting, statistic there, having the concept of really wanting to be an owner, but having some event that really changes the way you feel about ownership, or for that matter, being on your own. Okay. So what kind of leader are you? Who are some of the leaders that you look up to? Maybe John Wooden, the famous basketball coach out of UCLA, or Pat Riley from the Lakers, initially. Okay. Or Michael Jordan's former coach, Phil Jackson. Have you ever wondered why so many of the world's best coaches come from the world of basketball? That's a good question. Okay, well, perhaps more so than any sport, basketball requires a team to work together. And so it shouldn't be a huge surprise that basketball breeds many of the best coaches. For a long time, the winningest coach in basketball history was a guy named Don Meyer. And Don Meyer on leadership. Meyer held the record for the most wins by a men's basketball coach whose career included at least one stint with an NCAA member school, until it was surpassed by Duke University coach Mike Krzyzewski in November of 2011. His career win total includes stints as a NAIA coach. And he is the subject of the book Playing for Coach Meyer, written by Stephen Smiley, who played for Meyer as a point guard between 1999 and 2004, and who served as an assistant coach from 2006 to 2008. Meyer is also the subject of more extensive biography. This more extensive biography is called How Lucky You Can Be: The Story of a Coach Don Meyer, written by ESPN baseball analyst Buster Olney, who has had a close relationship with Meyer since Olney was assigned to cover baseball in Nashville, where Meyer was coaching at Lipscomb. So, when we're looking at this concept of foxhole leadership, it's really about who you would want watching your back. When forced to pick, many people don't pick their friend. They pick the person they would trust with their life. Okay. The person who has been there before and gotten himself out alive. And I know that sounds kind of funny to some of you guys, but it really is true. If you were really trying to consider, your situation and knowing that you're in maybe a bad situation with your business, and you're looking at, okay, who can I call or who do I trust, to help me turn this thing around? You might be friends with a lot of people, and you might have people who are very close to you in your family. But if you had an opportunity to, I bet you would pick someone who has been in a situation that maybe as bleak as yours or worse, and they were able to not just turn themselves around, but thrive when they did. And so, these are things that we want to think about. And so in the foxhole test, really, you've got your second most trusted, your most trusted, and then your third most trusted. Okay. And I want you to kind of look at this because if you're looking at, how do you pull yourself up out of this foxhole? What is it that you need to be paying attention to? Well, in the trenches with team, you never delegate something, that they wouldn't do, or that I wouldn't do if I'm in the trenches with a team. The person that carries the most weight. And this is really, really important when you're thinking about this, because you want to be looking at the foxhole leader from the standpoint of what they would do. When it comes to business, we all know that foxhole leader, she's the first to arrive in the morning and the last person to leave in the evening. There's no task too small for her. Employees look up to their foxhole leader and they want to learn from them, because employees know there is nothing inside her company the foxhole leader hasn't done firsthand. I was having just a conversation a couple of days ago, and I was talking about being an entrepreneur. And I said, my first introduction to being an entrepreneur, I thought that it was going to be so glorious to have my own business. I was all excited until I realized that going into business, or actually after the first month, I realized that meant that if the janitor didn't show up, the job was mine. Okay. And, or for that matter, if the cook didn't show up, the job was mine, because I didn't have the resources to have a huge team at that time. And so I had a little small school, and I was really excited about my school. It was doing well. But the thing that I had to really think about is, how do I make sure that I keep this thing going, for the long haul? And it meant that I had a tremendous amount of commitment. And so I, of course, had a wonderful mentor. And it was amazing to me to learn that she too had to wear multiple hats when she first started. And, with her first school, there were lots of things that she had to learn to do. But at the time when I came to know her, she actually was in the process of returning a $4 million check. A $4 million grant check, because she had received so much grant money that year that she wasn't going to be able to do that part of the project. And so instead of her cashing the $4 million check, she sent it back so they could send it to someone else that could use it, which I thought was an amazing thing, to be in that position. Wow. And so when we're looking at this concept of foxhole leadership, we need to be thinking about, who do we want to learn from, right? Or who would want to learn from us? Foxhole leaders stimulate tremendous loyalty and build the least valuable companies. Ooh. The paradox of foxhole leadership. The skills that engender loyalty among your employees are the tendencies that drag down the value of your company. So here's the thing, thinking about the concept of me doing everything and being everything to everyone and all of that, when I'm looking at it from the place where I sit now as a Value Builder certified business advisor, I had no idea how I was devaluing my company. Although a lot got done, and it got done to my standards, at the end of the day, if I were to not be able to provide services myself personally, the bottom line is my company would have probably suffered a lot, okay, and maybe still survive, but I'm not sure. I really am not sure. So before we really kind of take a look at this, companies that can sustain a 3 month absence of the owner are more than twice as likely to receive a premium offer. If I were selling a company today and that company could run without me, it is far more valuable to the buyer than a company that required my presence in order for it to do anything. So before we kind of get into how to delegate effectively, let's start with the why delegation is critical. And, for any business owner, being able to delegate well means your company can thrive without you personally overseeing the details. This freedom allows your company to grow without you as a bottleneck, while the quality of your work life improves as you no longer have to spend your time fighting fires and answering mundane questions, or for that matter, cleaning toilets. Best of all, your company is worth more. As you can see in the chart, we're going to show you this chart here. Those companies that can sustain a 3 month absence of their owner are more than twice as likely to receive a premium acquisition offer compared to companies unlikely to survive the loss of the owner. So when we were talking about suffering a lot and not surviving, this is what we're looking at. 14% would suffer a lot and not survive. But there are 19% that would suffer a lot but survive, and 23% would suffer a little but survive. And 29% would hardly suffer at all and survive. And this is when you're looking at this from the standpoint of, how would your business perform if you were out of action for 3 months and unable to work? And so the real thing here is, how do you prepare yourself and position yourself so that your company is not you? Okay. And I talk about this a lot because I tell people that they need to position themselves so that they are not their company. Their company is an asset. You can, lead by example without undermining the company value. So let's talk about some people that have done such. Here is Michelle Hecken. She was on the Built to Sell episode number 298. Alpha Translations acquired her company. Alpha, now let me just say this, it was her company, Alpha Translations, was acquired for 6.7 times the EBITDA. And I need you to understand what that means. That means that the company's actual earnings before the interest, tax, and the depreciation and amortization, her earnings may have been, a very menial amount in comparison, but she was able to get 6.7 times what those earnings were, what the revenue stream is after or before the tax and before all of the expenses and everything else was taken out. So she went from translator to proofreader, felt guilty for saying no, off-boarded herself from the company, okay, and made her company more valuable. So what's the guilt-free goodbye? Tell them where you're going, explain why, and then show them how to do things right and leave. It's so important for you to get this. I mean, like, get on a train, get on a bus, get on a plane, go somewhere, or for that matter, just have a staycation at your home. But you need to be able to do that. And when you're able to do that, it makes your company far more valuable. Now, for some people, I know, I don't have the time to write standard operating procedures. And we have done a few sessions where we talked about having standard operating procedures and how important that was. Yesterday, as my husband and I were driving over here in Northern California, we were moving around because we had to visit some of our clients. And I remember some of the things that we were talking about was creating standard operating procedures for some very simple things that we really didn't think about having having to have standard operating procedures for, which is things that like our travel, how we travel plan and how we make sure that certain things are in place, because we have a company that actually is global and we have to physically go where our clients are, sometimes a few times a month. And so there needs to be a set of procedures for travel. We set up procedures for everything else, but when it comes to the travel, we take the brunt of it onto ourselves and not really thinking about, well, what would this look like if we had to send our staff somewhere? That could be very challenging, especially when we haven't necessarily put things in place. Well, sure, they would have their expenses paid and things of that nature, but what would be the procedure for doing the airlines? What are the procedures for getting hotels? What are the procedures for making sure that if we're using the right cards, that the points are being accumulated? Or for that matter, the loyalty programs with regard to the hotels, that we're actually maximizing the points we have there. Or even with our account with Avis, how are we managing that? Because we have free days. And how do we maximize the days? Are we letting some of the days go by the wayside because of the fact that we're not, properly tracking when we have passes? So these are some of the things that we were thinking about. And I am telling you that when you don't have time to write SOPs, that means that you don't have time to really make more money. Just saying, because you want to make sure that people understand a few things, the experience that you want your customers to have, and what has to happen backstage to make that possible. Those are two really important things. Here we have Jody Cook. She was episode number 292 on Built to Sell Radio. And JC Social Media left 2 weeks after selling her company. So she kept a log of employee questions. She had 50 recurring processes, answering the phone to running payroll. She had it all kept together, not just the way, her way. Okay. And she avoided third-party templates. So she only used the things that were specific to her brand. And I want to say that she built her company to up to 16 employees, and she was determined to see her company flourish without her. So she positioned a staff member as her company spokesperson for even media interviews. She kept a log of every time an employee asked her a question, so that, it was something that could be seen later. And she really did set about herself to transfer all of the requisite knowledge that was really required to run her company to the team so that they could do what they needed to do. She also created an operating manual, which is kind of interesting, sort of like an operating manual that you have for a vehicle, okay? She identified approximately 50 recurring processes and wrote them down, in this operating manual. And she explained everything from how, from her perspective of how she wanted it done. As things changed, she modified the manual. When employees asked a new question, her automatic response was to check the manual. I see myself becoming like this in these days, because as we're dealing with certain things, I ask people to go and look at the videos, okay? Because these recurring things that we do, we recorded videos, and there are a lot of them. And so now we're in the process of taking the videos and putting them in an organized fashion and placing them in the positions where people can get to them quickly. Her business really started to thrive without her overseeing things day to day. And in 2020, she decided to sell and thought her business could be worth about 5 to 7 times. She was going to, 5 to 7 exit. Okay. And her first offer was for 5 times, with approximately 20% of her potential proceeds tied to a 3-year earnout. She realized she had failed to make it clear just how well her company was run without her. So she continued to market her company market it to buyers, but this time she went out of her way to explain how well the business ran. And she showed her acquirers her operating manual and explained the lengths she had gone to make herself redundant. She received two additional offers and accepted one at the top end of the range she was hoping for. She left 2 weeks later. The idea of an earnout sounds like a prison sentence. Take your medicine up front. Invest 3 weeks in the painstaking process of documenting your standard operating procedures. Record them, record videos, and put them into a system, so that an acquirer will be able to run your company without you. To write off, you can have the ability now to write off in the sunset with your cash in your hand. So, as we're looking at this, I really want you to be thinking about 3 weeks versus 3 years. In her mind, she was like, I'm not staying for three years. And I have known a lot of people who sold their company and did a 5-year earnout, or a 2-year earnout, or and I know that these are things that people are really not very happy to want to do. But it's important for you to understand that you can create a lifestyle that makes sense for you and position yourself so that you do not have to think about, okay, how you are doing when it comes to the area of making sure that you're not the foxhole leader, okay? With that said, I really want us to, turn our attention to what it is that we need to do in our own businesses. How can we position ourselves as leaders to make sure that we are in a position where things are working for us in a manner that we do not end up having to devalue our companies because we are so involved in everything and we don't have anyone that we can turn things over to, or we don't have a way of introducing the concepts of what it is that runs our companies to a new owner or a new manager. It's very important that we take these ideas that we've seen today and put them into practice, because we want to have the ability to do business better. And the one way we can do that is by making sure that we use strategies that absolutely position us so that we can one day, achieve our freedom point. Well, this has been Patience Rose with Red Worldwide, and we are excited that you have been here with us today. And I know we've had kind of a short one today, but I really believe that this is one that we could kind of take and chew on a bit to look at our own processes and see what do we need to do to ensure that we have positioned our own companies in a way that it's valuable and sellable, okay, or that we can at least chairman the board and pass it down, okay, and know that we have done something for ourselves that allows us to have the freedom and the experience and time that we desire and deserve. We'll see you again next time.